My name is Alex, and for most of my 28 years, I thought the world was a fair place, a place where hard work and genuine talent eventually paid off. I was a software engineer, not a flashy one, but I loved the intricate logic of code, the way lines of text could create something truly new and powerful. My world was small, my quiet suburban house filled with the soft hum of servers and the gentle glow of multiple monitors. I found a deep satisfaction in solving complex problems, in building things that could change the future. I was particularly good at artificial intelligence development, spending countless nights fueled by coffee and an unyielding passion. My life was simple, predictable, and focused on my work. My biggest ambition was to create something meaningful, something that truly innovated. I didn't care for fame or excessive wealth, just the quiet pride of a job well done. Then Mr. Silas Thorne entered my life, or rather, existed as the dark cloud over my department at Thorne Industries. He was my senior director, a man with a dazzling smile and an even more dazzling ability to charm clients and senior management. He exuded an air of effortless success, always impeccably dressed, always with the right word. I never truly liked him, finding his superficiality grating, but I respected his position. My world, as stable as it seemed, was about to be shaken to its core. I had spent nearly 3 years pouring my soul into a revolutionary AI algorithm, a predictive modeling system that promised to redefine several industries. It was my magnum opus, a culmination of all my skills and dreams. The day I presented the final working prototype to Thorne, I felt a surge of pride, a genuine belief that I had created something truly groundbreaking. Thorne was impressed, effusive even. He said he would present it to the board, give it the spotlight it deserved. But that spotlight never touched me. A month later, Thorne unveiled his new project at a major industry conference. It was my algorithm, rebranded, repackaged, and presented as his own original creation. He stood on stage, beaming, accepting accolades, while I watched from my small apartment, a cold dread twisting in my stomach. I confronted him, armed with timestamps, code history, and every shred of proof I had. Thorne just smiled, that same charming, unctuous smile, and dismissed it all as the ravings of a disgruntled employee. He already had his narrative, and his powerful network believed him. Within a week, disciplinary reports, full of fabricated instances of insubordination and incompetence, started appearing in my file. I was fired, my reputation in the industry shredded. My name was quietly blacklisted. Suddenly, I was unemployed, my savings dwindling, my dreams shattered, all because one man decided he wanted my success for himself. My problem was immense. How do you reclaim your life and your dignity from a man who had stolen everything and seemed utterly untouchable? The injustice burned inside me, a hot, ceaseless flame. I tried the conventional paths first. I hired a lawyer, a sharp, determined woman who believed in my case. But Thorne's legal team was formidable, his lies expertly woven, and his influence pervasive. My lawyer found every door slammed shut. Industry bodies, professional associations, even tech journalists I contacted, all either ignored me or quietly informed me that Thorne's reputation was too solid, my claims too unbelievable without irrefutable, public proof. Each failed attempt chipped away at my resolve, leaving me feeling more isolated and powerless. Thorne's perfect life continued, broadcasted in tech magazines and online interviews. I saw him on television, accepting an award for his innovation, while I was struggling to pay my rent, picking up odd freelance coding jobs that barely kept me afloat. Despair became my constant companion, a heavy blanket that smothered every spark of hope. I would spend hours just staring at the wall, the injustice a bitter taste in my mouth. I even contemplated giving up, disappearing into obscurity, letting Thorne win completely. But then the image of his arrogant, triumphant smile would flash in my mind, reigniting a cold, calculating fire. I couldn't let him get away with it. I wouldn't. Direct confrontation was useless, I understood that now. Thorne was too well protected, too influential. I needed a different approach, something insidious, something that would dismantle him from the inside out, just as he had dismantled me. I began to research Thorne, not just his public persona, but every scrap of information I could find. His habits, his family, his hobbies, his fears. My coding skills, once used for creation, were now repurposed for meticulous digital espionage. I learned about his obsession with antique clocks, especially a priceless family heirloom, a tall, imposing grandfather clock that stood in his study. I started small, subtle intrusions into his digital life, ordering obscure, slightly embarrassing items online under his name, tweaking the settings on his smart home system so his lights would flicker randomly or his thermostat would constantly adjust itself by a single degree. He probably dismissed them as glitches, minor annoyances. But I knew they were there. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough to satisfy the hunger for retribution growing inside me. The despair returned, heavier this time, as I realized how difficult it was to truly hurt a man like Thorn without getting caught. I needed to get closer, to become a part of his world, an unseen cancer. I spent weeks learning about antique clock repair, enough to feign competence. Then, using a fabricated resume and a new identity, I got a job at a high-end antique restoration company. One that, by sheer luck, was contracted to service Thorn's prestigious collection, including the very grandfather clock I was targeting. The day I finally entered his opulent mansion, posing as a repair technician, my heart hammered like a drum against my ribs. I meticulously examined the clock, making a show of it, while secretly installing a tiny, custom-built device I had painstakingly crafted. It was a miniature sound generator, wirelessly controlled, capable of emitting almost any sound at precise, adjustable frequencies and volumes. I nestled it deep within the clock's mechanisms, undetectable to the naked eye. That night, I initiated the first subtle attack. I started with almost imperceptible clicks, faint whispers, sounds barely audible, only when Thorn was alone in his study, late at night. He probably dismissed them as the creaking of an old house, or perhaps his own imagination playing tricks on him after too many late nights. I could see the initial results through my covert monitoring of his social media and the few public appearances he still made. He looked a little more tired, a little more stressed. I increased the frequency and intensity. The whispers became a little clearer, almost like faint voices murmuring just beyond the edge of understanding. He started blaming his wife for leaving windows open, for drafts that would make the house creak. His irritation was a sweet symphony to my ears. I pushed Thorn closer and closer to the brink, watching his perfectly constructed life begin to unravel. The clicks from the grandfather clock became more insistent, the whispers evolving into fragmented sentences, always just out of reach, but undeniably present. I layered in phantom melodies, ancient lullabies that seemed to emanate from the clock's brass workings, only to vanish when Thorn tried to locate the source. Then I started to subtly manipulate his smart home system again, not just the lights, but his personal assistants, setting phantom alarms that wouldn't go off, or causing his voice-activated speakers to occasionally reply to questions he hadn't asked. Thorn was losing sleep, his eyes becoming hollow, bloodshot. His once pristine appearance was replaced by disheveled clothes and a perpetually agitated expression. He snapped at his family, his charming facade cracking to reveal a man on edge. His performance at work began to slip, his confident presentations replaced by hesitant, fumbling speeches. I could almost taste his growing paranoia. I knew it was time to make my presence, or at least the idea of my presence, known in a more direct, yet still unseen, way. I began to send anonymous, cryptic messages to Thorn's work email, short bursts of text filled with specific details about my stolen AI algorithm, phrases from my original code, and inside jokes that only I and Thorn would know. The algorithm remembers, one message read. The original source code yearns for its true author, another whispered into his inbox. Thorn, desperate and unhinged by the constant auditory and digital harassment, became utterly paranoid. He was convinced I was alive, somehow back, a ghost haunting his every move, a specter of his past coming to reclaim what he stole. He started seeing my face in crowds, hearing my name whispered in hallways, though no one else did. One particularly stormy night, I decided to deliver the final blow. Thorn was alone in his study, the antique clock ticking ominously, rain lashing against the windows. I remotely activated the device, unleashing a full auditory hallucination from within the clock. It began as a faint murmur, then swelled into a cacophony of accusatory voices, countless voices overlapping, all repeating Thorn's lies, his deceitful promises, his arrogant boasts, and among them my own voice, clear and cold, reciting lines of my lost code, the precise functions and variables he had stolen. "Thief!" they chanted. "Liar, imposter!" Thorn screamed, clutching his head, his face a mask of pure terror. He stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp, then lunged at the clock, smashing its ornate glass door with his bare fists, screaming, "Get out of my head! You're not real, you're not real!" He clawed at the clock face, trying to silence the phantom voices, his hands bleeding from the shattered glass. His family, drawn by the commotion and his terrified screams, found him in a state of complete, unhinged breakdown, raving about vengeful algorithms and ghostly coders. The aftermath was exactly what I had envisioned, yet somehow different. Thorne was committed to a private mental institution, diagnosed with a severe psychotic break. His career was utterly destroyed, not by public exposure of his theft, but by a public, spectacular mental collapse that became the talk of the industry. His once sterling reputation was in tatters, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. I watched from afar, reading the sparse reports, a cold, empty satisfaction settling within me. He was broken, utterly dismantled, and it was all my doing. I hadn't got my old job back, or my money, or my public recognition. My name was still mostly blacklisted. But the burning anger, the corrosive bitterness that had consumed me for so long, was finally gone. There was just a quiet void where the rage used to be. I started a new, simple life. I found work at a small, independent software company, coding backend systems, nothing glamorous but honest work. I no longer held grand ambitions, content just to exist, to build small, useful things, free from the shadow of Thorne. I believed I was finally free, free from the past, free from the darkness I had embraced. Months passed, turning into a year. My new life was calm, almost serene. One quiet evening, as I sat reading in my living room, the only sound the distant chirping of crickets, I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible click, click, click coming from the corner of my living room. My blood ran cold. It was coming from my own old, unused grandfather clock, a dusty antique I had inherited and never bothered to repair. A shiver of pure dread ran down my spine. The custom device I had built, the one I had installed in Thorne's clock, it shouldn't be active. It shouldn't be here. My heart began to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. I slowly approached the clock, every fiber of my being screaming at me to run. I listened closely. This time there was no mistaking it. A faint whisper just at the edge of hearing, emanating from within the old wood. You stole? You stole? The exact words, the same menacing tone I had programmed to torment Thorne. My breath hitched in my throat. I tore open the back panel of the clock, my hands trembling. The space where the device should have been, the very spot I had designed for it, was empty. But no, it wasn't empty. There, nestled amongst the silent gears, was a small, crudely fashioned wooden carving, an unsettling, almost human-like figure, staring blankly ahead. My device was gone. I stared at the empty space, then at the eerie carving, then at my own shaking hands. A wave of cold dread washed over me, deeper and more profound than any fear I had known before. Was it all in my head? Had the darkness I unleashed somehow clung to me, followed me home, a malevolent echo of my own creation? The grandfather clock in the corner began to tick louder, not a comforting rhythm, but an ominous, insistent pulse, a steady beat drawing me further into its inescapable, spectral grasp. I was not free. I was haunted, and I had haunted myself.